Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to present a systematic review and meta-analysis on the effects of a menopause on voice metrics, a study done by myself, Filipa, and my colleague Diego Ardura at UNED Madrid, Spain. Previous studies found that about 35 to 46% complain about vocal discomfort and vocal changes. So the effects of the menopause from a patient perspective are not neglected at all. The question here now is to what extent self-reported vocal symptoms can be reflected on voice-related metrics. When we look at previous studies, we found controversial results. On the one hand, there are studies that didn't find differences in mean fundamental frequency and harmonics to noise ratio of sustained vowels between pre- and postmenopausal women. On the other hand, others have found a reduction in mean fundamental frequency and sound pressure level of sustained vowels in poses compared to premenopausal women. And others have found also a reduction in speaking fundamental frequency in postmenopausal women with low body mass indexes compared to postmenopausal women with high body mass index and using hormonal replacement therapy. So the controversial nature of previous results and the great heterogeneity of their study designs and data collection and analysis call for the need of performing a systematic review and a meta-analysis, aiming at identifying the voice metrics that change with the menopause and clarifying on the magnitude of those changes. We screened several databases, interdisciplinary databases, and found 1,430 references. But when looking at their titles, they were, some of them, the 1,217 actually, were identified as non-relevant for the effects of the menopause on the voice. So we ended up with 213 studies that were screened for duplicates. As we had 117 duplicates, we ended up with 96 studies selected for evaluation. When looking at these studies, we found out that 78 failed to meet at least one eligible criteria, which were to be a full article published in English, to contain detailed information on study main attributes, and to be a cross-sectional study comparing pre with postmenopausal groups at least. So we ended up with 18 studies that could be included or considered for a meta-analysis. And then we looked at these 18 studies to see how many voice metrics existed studied. And we found 28 voice-related parameters or assessment instruments. The majority of them, of the voice-related parameters, were acoustic. Only 3 were phonatory. Then we had 2 assessment instruments of clinical relevance and 3 patient-related outcomes. Because a meta-analysis can only be performed on more than 3 studies with comparable data, the metrics that were reported by only 1 study needed to be disregarded. Also, there were some studies on, for example, speaking fundamental frequency, mean fundamental frequency for the sustained vowels, the voice handicap index that presented results that could not be compared. For example, for the case of the voice handicap index, some studies reported the total sum of the scores, whereas others reported the total mean of the scores. As concerned to means fundamental frequency of sustained vowels, some have studied the sustained vowel A and others have studied the sustained vowel E or U. And we know that the fundamental frequency is highly dependent on the task. We ended up only with 9 studies that could be included in the meta-analysis because 2 needed further clarification on data distribution and dispersion. An email was sent to their authors. Because only 1 replied to the email, we ended up with 8 studies that could be meta-analyzed. And the voice-related acoustic and phonatory metrics that were included in the meta-analysis were these: the speaking fundamental frequency that had 6 studies that could be compared, the mean fundamental frequency for the vowel A that had also 6 studies that could be compared, and for the remaining voice metrics, 3 studies only were found that could be compared. and the metrics were jitter, shimmer, noise to harmonics ratio, and the maximum phonation time. We found out significant results only for the speaking fundamental frequency and the mean fundamental frequency for the vowel A, so we will present here only those results. Here is a table for the studies included in the meta-analysis for the speaking fundamental frequency. You see the sample size, the mean, and the standard deviations of the pre and the post-menopausal group. And what the meta-analysis does is that takes into consideration the results, the findings of these previous studies, and weights them, and assesses whether they found significant differences or not. For example, the Mirror et al. Study didn't find a significant reduction of 7.15 hertz between postmenopause and premenopausal groups. There was a reduction, but this reduction was not significant because the 95% interval confident interval crosses the zero, although this study weighted for the total result of the meta-analysis of about 20%. The study of Dassler et al. Had a weight of for our meta-analysis results of 27%, and they found a significant reduction of 6.87 hertz of speaking fundamental frequency in postmenopause as compared to premenopausal women. We found a reduction after weighting all these studies of 10.1 hertz in postmenopausal women as concerned to speaking fundamental frequency. If we look at the weighted average of their mean speaking fundamental frequencies, the premenopausal group present 190.88 hertz and the postmenopause 180.78 hertz. We did the same meta-analysis for the fundamental frequency of the sustained vowel A. Our results showed, after weighting all the studies, a reduction of 13.41 hertz, which is about 1.18 semitones lower fundamental frequency for the sustained vowel A on the pauses compared to the premenopause. When looking at the weighted average of the speaking fundamental of the fundamental frequency of the sustained vowel A, we found 204 as compared to 190.59 hertz. So what can we conclude? Yes, the menopause has a mild effect on fundamental frequency. It is decreased with the menopause, but this decrease is below the 2 semitone just noticeable interval difference for both sinus, tones, and voices produced within the range of 160 to 200 hertz, which is the case of female voices. Also, when we look at the mean values of the speaking fundamental frequency and of the mean fundamental frequency for the sustained vowel A, they are both well above the cutting point for distinguishing female from male voices, which is 165 hertz according to Oates. So could these results be related to the nature of primary studies? Well, yes. First, we know that there is a dependency of F0 with age. There is a decrease of with age of fundamental frequency, and that's why the World Health Organization recommends comparisons between middle age with younger and postmenopausal women with restricted age range groups in these 3 groups. And that was not the case for all primary studies included in this meta-analysis, because we see that some of them included age range of 5 to 9 standard deviations in the premenopausal middle age group, and they didn't have a younger premenopausal group to compare with in many of them. We found a great heterogeneity of our results as to what concerns the standard deviations of fundamental frequency. An example of that is a Ferraz et al. Study that reported on average more than 6 times smaller standard deviation for the fundamental frequency of sustained vowel as compared to the remaining results. So there is a clear need for a change in voice research here to find out the effects of the menopause on the voice, and we should take into account that we should have methodological guidelines for reducing the heterogeneity between the studies, especially on methods of data collection and analysis, if we want to compare the results and really see what are the clear effects of the menopause on the voice. We also should prime for vocal tasks that require more than 2 degrees of freedom as to what concerns voice production, and complement therefore the acoustical metrics with phonatory and aerodynamical and perceptual evaluations. Use clinical evidence to guide the distribution of participants between pre and postmenopausal groups rather than age only. And this would be the recommendations for further studies on the effects of menopause on the voice. Thank you very much.